This sitting is resumed. Prior to the lunch, suspension for lunch, we were debating the amendment to the Act. To that we shall return. Our member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do mean it when I say that I will not be long on this occasion. Even though on the last occasion, sir, you did definitely, I did enjoy your indulgence on the last occasion. Far greater than I had realized. But in particular, you may observe that my voice suffers slightly from the wonderful festivities that we have just had the benefit of. And on that note, I would take this opportunity to congratulate the National Cultural Foundation, the Ministry of Tourism and BTMI, and all those who were involved in helping us welcome again this Crop Over Festival. I think that one of the things that is encouraging about this administration, and it's something that I've always said, is that we have to be willing to experiment with change. Barbados is a country that I believe is innovative enough, is small enough, is flexible enough to be able to hold the hands and guide of individuals and guide each other through changes that might sometimes be positive and that might sometimes call for us to revisit what we're doing. But one of the things that I am most proud of about Barbados and Barbadians as a people is that we are bold and that we are willing to embrace, experience, change, and whether our feedback is negative or positive, that we're willing to have the experience. And I feel proud that this is a government, sir, who is willing to let ideas contend and who's willing to test, who's willing to experiment in a way, not just with any idea, but in a way that does not put citizens at risk, that is able to assess the risks and to go forward with the best intentions and with due diligence. And in keeping with that theme, sir, I must commend the bill that is before us, as well as the member who introduced it. I am happy to have been associated in the early days with some of the reforms that have had to take place and that are continuing with respect to the Ministry of Energy. Now, from the time this government came to service in 2018, one of the things that was set out as a path to enfranchisement is the renewable energy sector. And as the honourable member who led this bill intimated, it has not been easy. It has not been easy because of the fact that it has been an emerging sector that has had to compete for space and for the attention and the energy of the public administration machinery of the government, compete with larger sectors. And whenever a sector is emerging, one has to set up the infrastructure and the machinery to make it work. And not just to make it work for business, not just to look at this thing that we loosely call, or we generally call the doing business environment or the environment for competitiveness, but more of a challenge to make it work for every single individual. And I think that sometimes we underestimate how much of a challenge that can be. And as the honourable member said, one of the things that we boldly stepped forward to do is to say energy has to be democratized in such a way that everyone benefits. And we're not just talking about being able to invest in the sector, but being able to sit in your home and benefit from the fact that you are now a generator of power, a generator of electricity. And so the bill that is before us, the amendment to a 2013 act that was quite frankly not well put together at the time, did not anticipate, in fact, the growth in the sector the way that a former Prime Minister in the person of Tom Adams had anticipated it far, far before its time. And so what we find ourselves having to do is to be able to create the framework for people to participate, not to shout from the outside, not to threaten and to harangue, as regrettably some feel is the only way to get attention, but to actually constructively participate in a process similar to any objection to, for example, a planning permission, where if there is a constructive objection, if there is a constructive concern that this creates the infrastructure, the systems for a person to be able to do that. I want to align myself, sir, with the comments made by the Honourable Member who piloted the bill, who suggested to us that this is an area in which we have to be able to express solidarity. And expressing solidarity as a people does not mean that you may not take exception to certain parts of what is being presented. It does not mean that you may not have feedback or that you may not wish to share input. But expressing solidarity means acknowledging that this country finds itself, like all countries of similar size, similar population, finds itself having to grapple with ever-changing global circumstances. Now, all over the world, and it is a question, sir, that is foremost in my mind because it is a matter to which I have to turn my attention almost every day in the work that I do. The question of the climate crisis is not esoteric. And I think, regrettably, sometimes when we speak, we give the impression that it is. It is not academic. It is not theoretical. It is something real that is happening to the world, and especially to countries like Barbados and those of us in this region, what we call the front line of the climate crisis. And the world is starting to now experience something that we have been experiencing for decades. And we've seen the wildfires, and we've seen a lot of the geopolitical wrangling with respect to the availability of energy, the availability of fuel to be able to run the operations of countries and business around the world. This is a real concern. This is, without sounding too alarmist, an existential crisis for the world. And the question of how quickly we are able to transition, truly transition to renewable energy is real. It became even more real when Russia decided to invade Ukraine. And for countries like ours, and we saw it, as the member said, with respect to the availability of vaccines for the COVID pandemic. And the truth is that we have to be grateful and that we have to be proud that we have a Prime Minister who is able to command global attention. Because were it not for that capacity to command global attention and to convene global players, we may still have been at the back of the line waiting for COVID vaccines. And in a very real way, the leadership that Barbados is showing with respect to climate and with respect to renewable energy democratization, making it available to every single person, that leadership is putting us in a position to not just be a taker of policy from the international community. The leadership that we show in saying that this is about people. Sir, over a decade ago now, time is nothing nowadays. Sometimes you forget when things happened. But when I worked with the UN system, the conversation at the time was about energy independence and energy poverty. And the concern at that time was that there would be countries who would be left behind, who would be left out of this transition because we didn't have the wherewithal to develop the technologies, to import the technologies, to benefit from them. So for a country that invented the solar water heater, that saw Barbadians leading the way in how we were able to use solar technology to have access to hot water, it is fitting that we are now able to lead the way in making sure that people can be generators of energy and can benefit and can offset the cost of running a household based on the fact that we benefit from so much sunlight every year. And so this amendment, and I dare say that we may find, as the Honourable Prime Minister mentioned in her intervention, that other amendments are necessary, that other changes to the systems that we use to be able to make energy available to all are necessary. When it comes to battery storage, we have a ways to go. When it comes to making clear to all people what is the process by which this can happen for you, that is ongoing and that is underway. And as I will always return to in this honourable place, we have to make sure that we don't have the systems written down, that we don't only have the systems written down and documented, but that we have them operational so that they actually work for all people. And so I do have to commend this Electric Light and Power Amendment Bill to this House, and to say that this has to be the beginning. I am not one of those who suggests that we should discard as a productive sector tourism, because any country that takes the thing it has distinguished itself in excelling in and decides just simply for the purpose of showing that it can to set it aside is not serious about development. I do think that in the question of how we are able to diversify our economy in ways that more climate-proof the economy, in ways that mean that if there is a crisis abroad, that we do not wholly suffer, that as we have that conversation, we have to look at how we bring the energy discussion into how we integrate it into more sectors. So that it's not just a question of renewable energy as a sector in itself, but how we make sure that it works for all sectors, how we make sure that it's linked to agriculture, that it's linked to tourism, that we use it across the board to do what? To reduce, for the average person, the cost of providing energy to their day-to-day activities and to their businesses, because ultimately, that has to be what this is about. It is not just about having renewable energy for the sake of it. It is about materially reducing the cost of energy. And one understands that there's several factors that go into that, but that the more we can get to a reliance on renewable energy as against a reliance on fossil fuels, that we're closer to having that problem solved. So while I do support the amendment, and I must commend the Ministry of Energy for the steps that have been taken, including to make it simpler and to streamline the application process, how it coincides with the planning department, with the General Electric with Light and Power itself, and so on. These things have been necessary. I will pick up on another part of the conversation in this honourable place today that has to do with the question of information and availability of information, and how we make it clear that this is a government that is and always is acting in the best interests of all Barbadians. The conversation, sir, on the report of the Auditor General, I believe is an important one. It concerns me because having come from a Democratic Labour Party administration that was, I believe, and I have to be very careful about the nomenclature that I use, but having come from a Democratic Labour Party administration from which the Auditor General's report and dedicated reports on SOEs did point to misappropriation, did point to cases where the interests of the people of this country were secondary at best to whatever was propelling the actions of those individuals. Having come from that place, having come from a place, sir, and the member for Christchurch East Central will attest, that when we came to service in 2018 as ministers in finance, economic affairs, and investment, the state of information, of financial reporting, the things that were allowed to obtain were appalling. Having come from that position, having had to, sometimes it felt almost physically, I don't like when people don't use the word literally properly, but it felt almost as if you were literally taking a bucket and a mop, a broom and a shovel to clean up the mess, just to be able to see clearly the state of the finances at that time. It was a challenge. And I don't think that my hardest exam at university, my most challenging project as an economist ever prepared me for what we faced. Coming to service to find the state of financial reporting the way that it was found. And immediately, we said, this can go no further. And set up systems, even before we brought the legislation with respect to the Financial Management Act, set up systems to be able to say that by the 5th day of every month, we needed to have a report on the financials for the previous month. Being able to say we needed to understand what was happening with numbers across several institutions, because you cannot plan for what you're going to do if you don't know what you have. And so, sir, some of these observations that are made in the Auditor General's report point to not malfeasance, not misappropriation, not a government that set targets and didn't meet them, but point to systems that still leave room to be improved. And I repeat myself, because I think we need to be able to show the difference. So I read this report 3 times. And I read it alongside some of the financial information that it references. And you know why, sir? Because before I stand in any public forum and say that the challenges that we face are more about how we treat to and report data than about anything else. I wanted to be sure. Because as has been said in the public domain, and as is true, this is a government that came to service on a platform of transparency and accountability. And this is a government that can stand by that platform of transparency and accountability. And the way that we will do it is to take every single claim or assertion that is made by the Auditor General in this report and to respond to it one by one by one by one. It must be done. And so I do not believe, and I think that we have to take the trust of the Barbadian people, we have to cradle it in our arms, sir, because it was lost by the last administration. And we brought the people of Barbados to a point where we demonstrated, you see, that's the thing. You can know something in your heart and in your soul, but if you don't demonstrate it, nobody else is going to know. And so we asked for the trust of the Barbadian people. We earned it. We demonstrated, I believe, in those 4 years from 2018 to 2022, that we were able to get the economy back on a path that the Barbadian people and the world could trust again. But it's not just about the economy. It's not just about the macro. We also demonstrated, through measures like the one before us here today, that we would not preside over a plan for growth that did not put people at the center. And that is what this measure is about. But I will tell you what is worrying me, sir. And it is that we can't just know for ourselves that we are doing right by the people of Barbados. We have to show. And if we allow a report that, to be frank, is simply reporting in the main on poor systems, on the fact that certain reports were not made in time, on the fact that IT systems have gaps, need to be strengthened. When I review this is what I see. And so this government must, one by one, claim by claim, assertion by assertion, come to the people of Barbados and say, this is what obtained in this circumstance. This is the reform that we are implementing to address this. And this is the timeline by which we believe that you will see an improvement. That is the conversation that we have to have. The question of the convening of the Public Accounts Committee, and the reason that I do not now go into any details, sir, on the contents of the Auditor General's report, is that I take very seriously my role as a member of the Public Accounts Committee. I take it very seriously. And I would not wish to prejudice any of those conversations that we are yet to have about this report or any other report, because I think that we have to maintain the integrity of that committee. I also happen to think that the person who presides over such a committee should be an elected member. The notion that someone who was not elected by any Barbadian person should preside over a critical process of accountability is one that does not sit well with me. I have high expectations, sir, of the constitutional reform process because I believe in the will of the people. I believe in the democratic process. And I believe that when Barbadians choose a person to represent them, they are tasking that person with the important business of making sure that their interests are protected. That is what the Public Accounts Committee is about. And I think it is easy to come and play with the will of people, it is easy to come and grandstand for political profile when no one has elected you, when no one has sent you to represent them. Because those of us who ask people to trust us, who ask people in Bannisterland and Flagstaff and Clapham and Carrington Village and Thorpes and Haynesville to trust us, we take that very seriously. That is why I take my role in the Public Accounts Committee very seriously, sir. Because every time I receive evidence, I hear evidence from someone, I am thinking about the people who are paying taxes in this country every day, the people who are depending on the services of government, who may not receive them in a timely way or receive them at all if we do not manage the people's resources properly. So I take that very seriously. And I believe that we have to make a demarcation between the functions of governance that must be executed by elected individuals and the others that perhaps need not. But that may be a conversation for another day. That being said, I believe that we have to move with expediency, sir, to settle the business of the Public Accounts Committee, to say how it will be constituted, given that we find ourselves in a position of having no leader of the opposition, and getting on with the business of reviewing the report. But beyond that, I am challenging us, the government, to once and for all address the assertions, because the narrative that is out there that has already left these shores, that has already left this region, and that has already left this hemisphere is that an absence of response to a report of this nature suggests something other than what we know is the truth. And so I firmly believe, and I also believe that the process for considering this report also has to be reformed. I am advised that ministries and departments and agencies must respond. But I believe that apart from the individual responses from those ministries and agencies that might feel unfaired by some of the assertions of the report, and so might hurriedly come to correct them, that we need to have a consolidated, constructive response to a report that really points out some issues with systems of governance and data. And that fails, in my estimation, to point out any wrongdoing. To the extent that it does, that it might theoretically is the purview of the Public Accounts Committee. But what, sir, bothers me, and this is in keeping with the contribution of the member for St. James Central, what bothers me, as someone who sat on this front bench for just under 4 years, is that a government that has done as much as this government has done, including reforms such as this, to clean up the shoddy work and the poor economic management of the last government, a government that has done as much as this one has done to bring Barbadian people into this circle of empowerment, a government that has done as much as this one has done to show the world that Barbados is a place and a jurisdiction that they can trust, cannot afford to be silent on a report that only looks at administrative gaps in a system. This government has done too much to leave that much unsaid. And so, while I throw my wholehearted support behind these amendments, while I agree that we seem to be in a mood in the country where people, in an absence of facts and an absence of information, are creating all kinds of storylines. In an environment like that, one must, as the senior economic advisor did this morning in response to the unfortunate comments about the issue of printing money, I can only say that I had different economics lecturers, sir. So I don't have to. You need not worry that I reflect the level of capacity of the ones who are speaking. But in an environment such as that, this government has to speak. I feel confident that this government will speak comprehensively. And I feel confident that when it does, that there will be calm, that there will be certainty about what we can expect in future reports. There will be certainty about the reforms that will come to make sure that these gaps do not continue. And that there will be certainty, sir, as well about the role of the Auditor General and what that office also owes to the public of Barbados in the way of putting all facts on the table. And with those words, sir, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for Kerrie Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this amendment before the Chamber, and I do so taking fully into consideration the contribution of the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central, because this particular amendment, sir, speaks to how do we improve the transparency of a process, which I know that there are some outside of this space that is so busy trying to create mischief that they do not even recognize when the government of the day is taking the steps that they ought to have done when they first passed this piece of legislation. Because this isn't simply just a matter of expediting the process as it ought to. Because as you know, sir, whilst we come here in this place to create a legislative framework upon which policy obviously will be implemented, one always has to be very mindful as to the impact that it has, certainly whether directly or indirectly, sir, on the population. And therefore, from our perspective as a government, having come to office, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central just clearly articulated, we found a process, and the Honourable Member that piloted the debate this morning outlined very clearly for you, sir, what he experienced. We found a process that was riddled effectively, sir, with uncertainty, rendering, in a sense, a result that was not allowing either the government, as the regulators, the persons who are interested in investing, and businesses who will be participating whether in the installation process or the like, sir, to be able to have absolute certainty as to when they'll be able to do any of this work that was contemplated. But I think, sir, more importantly, when things did happen, nobody was sure as to exactly how it happened. And I think that this process, as outlined in this amendment, I give my absolute support to, because at the end of the day, sir, if I make an application for a project to execute renewable energy, I know that within a certain time, depending on what is required of me to be presented, I will get a yes or no on the basis of whatever it is that has been presented to the Ministry of Energy. And therefore, this amendment today, sir, not just, as I said, improves the facilitation aspect with respect to getting the decision, but the process then becomes much more transparent, because what was present before, nobody knew when what was supposed to happen, how it was supposed to happen, the timelines within which it was supposed to happen. And therefore, it was not conducive to a healthy, to the healthy conduct of business, and can often point, sir, to things being favored within the context of the ministry because of the absence of a process to be able to deliver that. And I think that as we go about the recovery, and I want to indicate to Barbadians and remind them, sir, that in this very Parliament, in March, when the Prime Minister delivered her budgetary proposals, she outlined very clearly that for residential properties that are owner-occupied, sir, that we will give the right to be able to have access to renewable energy and ensure that there's no need for a license fee to be able to participate in this. Now, people may hear this and think that it's just something that's said in Parliament and doesn't relate to them. But our reality is, sir, is that in order for us to be able to ensure that we can build a much more resilient Barbados, I'm going to take the opportunity, sir, to share some details with you, because this is so critical right now. And in the context of being able to do quite a number of things. But more importantly, from a national perspective, particularly given that every day now, sir, there are articles being published and written, whether in relation to how high gas prices may be in Barbados, sir, and that is indeed true. I remind the public that when you compare international prices, sir, without understanding that what we offer here in this country by way of public services, sir, is perhaps the widest range of public services that any citizen in this country can access, even in spite, sir, of 2 years of a significant pandemic. Absolutely true. That you can't say the same for the countries on the other list with respect to how we are being compared. And I accept, sir, that it is something that we all have to face. But in the context of this bill, and I want to share with the Chamber, I don't yet have the numbers available for me for the end of July, but at the next opportunity I will share them, sir. But just for the benefit of the Chamber, sir, between January and June of this year, sir, we spent $634.3 million, sir, importing fuel. $634.3 million, sir. Now, if we compare that, sir, to 2019, and I'm using 2019, sir, simply because that is the last normal year of economic activity that we can all reasonably agree that 2019 was a normal year, and I would like to believe that those who are outside this chamber would also agree that 2019 was a normal year, sir. We spent $384.6 million, sir, in fuel for the same period, January to June. That basically means, sir, that we spent $250 million more in the first 6 months of this year importing fuel because of the price, sir. And therefore, in the context of what we're discussing here as a debate, I would rather that we had spent that $250 million, sir, putting up solar panels and wind turbines all over Barbados, sir. But the reason that we've had to come here, sir, to do this is to facilitate a smoother implementation process, to allow for the acceleration of the implementation of the renewable energy sector, sir, to take root. Because the faster we can do that, sir, it means that we no longer have to spend the amount of money on fuel in the way that we are doing to generate electricity. And I accept, sir, that there are other elements which we have to address. And the truth is, sir, we have started with the electrification of our fleet, certainly at the Transport Board. Just 2 days ago, sir, I met with some entities looking at how we will be able to access funding to do some quite innovative things. And the government, sir, continues to work to make sure that we can complete some of the things that we said that we will do. And I will make some reference, sir, in a moment. But we met 2 days ago to ensure that we can devise a specific plan, sir, for how we will finance the transition, if you like, sir, the conversion process with respect to the Transport Board being able to do more of the conversion of the existing fleet, sir. You may recall, sir, that there was a local company that took one of the buses from the Transport Board, sir. It was probably about, 18 years or so old bus, sir, and completely stripped it down and converted it to electricity, to electric bus, sir. And therefore, what we are looking to do now, sir, is see how we can engage to get some specific funding to be able to help not just with the Transport Board, sir, but the other service providers across the island, because we accept, sir, that we can't only purchase buses overseas as part of the strategy, but we have to ensure that we can create new industry, new jobs, and to be able, sir, to help build out and build more resilience right here in this country. But these things can only happen, sir, because the government that the people elected, sir, is working to pull the players to the table, to crunch the numbers, to make sure that these things can happen. And the reality is, sir, that the framework within which we now have to make sure that this happens, this particular amendment before the chamber, sir, is going to be critical, because it is not just the conversion of buses, but certainly whether it is converting the regular vehicles, sir, passenger vehicles, whether to biodiesel or other fuels, because we cannot, sir, it is not sustainable to every few years, whenever there's a crisis, there's a shortage of, well, let's say shortage, it's not so much as a shortage, war creates uncertainty, or if some company decides that, as you know, sir, when there's an oil spill and the like and all of these things that drives energy markets, that we need, Barbados as a country needs to insulate itself, sir, as much as it can. And this government, sir, continues to work on all facets to be able to build a much more resilient Barbados. But we want to do these things, sir, and ensure that we give Barbadians the opportunity to make, whether it's a small investment, a large investment, a medium investment, into these opportunities, sir, because nobody in Barbados should be able to say with any truth that they did not want either get the access to the information or the opportunity to be able to help put a few dollars, sir, into a program that will yield in real dividends for the country, and in a sense, sir, help to drive and build out a new sector which we fully support and are on board with, and therefore that is what we are intended to do. And therefore it must be said that whilst the government is focused in, as we have done, sir, over the last few months in trying to ensure we can shield as many Barbadians as possible, this is the time, sir, that we have to push through very, very, very aggressively to make sure that we do not yield to the temptation, sir, that we do not yield to the temptation of going back on the promises that either that we made, certainly to the electorate, but I think as a country, in understanding that this is the path, sir, that we have to go down, because we really cannot lurch from external shock to external shock and then be exposed in this way. Now, the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central spoke to, and permit me, sir, to the Auditor General's report. And I will say this, sir, in the context that the process through which those reports are published, sir, I respect the process completely, in that the Auditor General's office is an autonomous office, and therefore there's absolutely no, and without any fear of contradiction, I can say, sir, there's been no interference at all from the Ministry of Finance or anything, sir, with respect to the Auditor General and his conduct. And certainly there's not been any from myself nor the Prime Minister in respect of that. I see the report, sir, just like each member of parliament when it's laid here. I see the reports just like everybody else. I've read the report, sir, and we indicated, sir, that we will go through department by department in order to make sure that we understand fully what are some of the reasons why some of the the accounting standards have not been met, given that these are the things that are required under the public sector accounting standards. But having said that, sir, I will take the opportunity when we get, very shortly, sir, we will be laying before the Parliament the fiscal framework. And let me take the opportunity to remind the public that when we passed the Public Financial Management Act, we have, over the course of the last few years, sir, laid the fiscal framework here in this Parliament. We've conducted mid-year reviews with respect to the publishing of data as it relates to the budgetary process. And this year, for the first time, as we have phased in segments of the PFM, as we've not implemented everything one time because we've had to take the opportunity to phase in specific elements of it. There will be a debate on the fiscal framework, sir, and at that particular point in time, I will be in a position, sir, to elaborate further, not just in the context of what it means for the fiscal framework, with respect to what some of the matters raised within the Auditor General's report. But what the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South Central is absolutely correct on, and I say this again without contradiction, there is nothing in the Auditor General's report that will lead anybody to conclude realistically that, one, there's been any thieving, corruption, or anything, so I use that word deliberately, because Barbadians need to understand that what the Auditor General is referring to, sir, in his report are issues of how do you account for the money. And I accept, sir, that it may not be it is a system that we've inherited. We have been making improvements along the way, but there's no thieving, sir, highlighted in any of those reports. And I am proud to stand here today, sir, to say that this government has been consistent with respect to its conduct in delivering for the people, and therefore the spending of the public purse, sir, since we have come to office. This chamber also, and I will reiterate, sir, every year since 2019, sir, all Barbadians had the opportunity to go on YouTube, sir, and watch ministers and public servants come into Parliament, sir, and to answer questions, yes, from members here, specifically about what is happening within their ministries. And that is in addition to, sir, as I said, the publishing of the fiscal framework, as well as the mid-year review, which I've done, sir. I think this will be the third time this year, in October, that will be done in order to help augment the information to the public. But let me also say, sir, that you would recall that the Honourable Prime Minister, as required by the Public Finance Management Act, this year, for the first time, there was the publication of the pre-election report, which was required, sir, as part of the Public Finance Management Act, which was the first time in the history of any country, sir, in the history of Barbados, and I speak subject to correction, but I'm not sure that it is done in any other part of the Caribbean, but I speak subject to correction, sir. But certainly for the first time in 2022, January, we published, sir, the pre-election report, which outlines, sir, specifically all of the associated spending and the rest that we determined was out there with respect to what could potentially face a new government should it come to light. And that, sir, you would recall, was on the heels, effectively, of the mid-year report that was done in October, as well as the fiscal framework, sir, that was done in August. The truth is, sir, that as with everything that we have brought here, and even up to a few weeks ago, the Honourable Member for St. Peter had brought some amendments with respect to health and safety to this chamber. And the reality is, sir, that each of us have gone through a number of areas of concern that we faced within our ministries, and we've come, sir, to correct those issues which were long-standing. and were seemingly overlooked, sir. The truth is, beyond that, sir, we have also been able to provide what I believe is more information. Of course, sir, the truth is, I often wonder sometimes, sir, in this day and age, the more information you put up there, the more mischief certainly is created. And I say so knowing that as an economist, sir, the market relies on information. But when people are going to take, sir, what is an amendment here and try to make a video to suggest that somehow or the other that the government is seeking to hide something from people, sir, when in truth, in fact, this process, as being articulated here today, sir, gives certainty, sir, to the applicants, those persons who may be impacted, sir, with respect to any applications for renewable energy or anything to express their concerns. And it gives certainty, sir, with respect to the process, and it holds certainly the ministry and by the minister to account with respect to the timelines for responses so that people can make business decisions, sir. Or whether people who have concerns will be able to have those concerns addressed before anything is moved forward, sir. And that, to me, sir, is the kind of process that I believe, sir, that Barbadians would feel comfortable with, given what obtained before. And therefore, I support, sir, this bill, as I said, for many reasons. We have to move forward, sir, as quickly as we can, because we can't afford, sir, really, to continue to spend at this rate, sir. It will be probably just over $500 million compared to last year, to 2019, sorry. More this year, and that's perhaps. I hope that's not the reality, because I would love the war to end tomorrow, sir, and things normalize in the way that we were expecting effectively at the beginning of the year. But on the current trajectory and all the tensions that are happening, sir, between who's going to Asia and all these kinds of things, sir, the world is becoming more and more uncertain. And therefore, our reality in this country is that we have to spend the time and we have to spend the money, sir, in being able to help drive the renewable energy sector, not just from a household perspective in terms of saving money on your light bill. I know that there's concern right now, sir, with respect to, and certainly the government in taking the decision to provide some relief to households, certainly from August 1st, sir, to be able to having reduced the VAT, sir, from 17.5% to 7.5%, sir. I know that Barbadians will see a little ease on their electricity bills during August and certainly for the next 6 months as we have articulated, sir. And I think that these are the kinds of things, sir, that whilst they are temporary, we have to now make sure that the Ministry of Energy and the Energy Division, that they're able to better process the applications and respond to persons in order to make sure then that we can build out this infrastructure so that we can really start to see in a very tangible way the benefits. But I say to Barbadians, we have to embrace the reality is we're gonna either have to convert our gasoline vehicles to biodiesel or biogas or whatever else may be out there, and therefore we have to start to think about how these things are done. I know that the Ministry of Environment, in terms of how we are getting the regulations with respect to the production of biogas and these types of things, will have to be ramped up as part of these things. But these are not just business opportunities, sir, but they represent opportunities for the consumers, sir, to be able to fuel their vehicles, commercial interests as well, sir, to be able to have access to not just cheaper access to fuel, but cleaner fuels. Because at the end of the day, sir, whether it's and I live to see the day, sir, when we don't have those exhausts coming out of the back of the B van, sir. You know when you drive behind one of them and they press out, you see that black smoke. I would love, sir, that we will be able to convert in the shortest possible time all of those public sector vehicles to electric. And I think it makes sense for the long term, not just for the operational side of the business, but certainly it shields them from the volatility, sir, with respect to the increase in fuel costs. And therefore, these are the things that the government will continue to work on in conjunction with the Transport Board as well as the private sector to be able to help deal with these matters over the shortest possible time. But I impress upon Barbadians that in this environment, we must do whatever we can, sir, to be able to achieve that objective, which one doesn't just make business sense, but it also helps to improve the air quality in the environment, and therefore helps Barbados then to reduce further any emissions that it has in terms of contributing to greenhouse gases. Even though we don't do a lot, we can still do it here to make it much more pleasant for Barbadians, and then for anybody who chooses to visit with us, sir, at any point in the future. And therefore, we have to see how we can mobilize some of those resources, certainly within the credit union sector, as well as the banking sector, sir, to put those monies to good use, to achieve objectives that I believe will help us in the medium to long run, but more importantly, will be able to help bring a measure of return to whether you're a retail investor or institutional investor like yourself, sir, to be able to make sure that there's benefit for all. This is an exciting area, sir, of growth, and I believe these amendments will help usher in, once implemented by the Honourable Member for St. James Central, that this really will open up, sir, and spur new investment in the country across a range of issues. And I've not touched on every aspect here, but certainly the build-out of more as we seek to electrify our fleets. Government has given its commitment to be able to do that. We want to work with the transport sector now to see how we accelerate their conversion across the board. That will mean, sir, new infrastructure to be put in place in relation to that. The conversion of passenger vehicles, sir, will be one of the critical things which Barbadians, I hope, will recognize it is something that we must do, and we will look to see how we can provide resources, I don't know, either through the Energy Smart Fund or other ways to be able to help augment and do these kinds of things. The reality is, sir, is that this framework, I think, is a solid one on the investment side, and we now must make sure that government as a whole, but certainly the public, sir, that they are now fully on board with respect to how each decision that we make, sir, as individual consumers now, will have an impact with respect to running costs, either of our homes, our vehicles, how we move around the country, sir, is going to be important. And I believe that if we are able to spend the money that we are now spending, sir, importing fuel, and divert that into investment into these areas, every business, sir, must see that investing in renewable energy just makes clear business sense, and to just do it. That every household, sir, that they have the opportunity to be able to take advantage of that where appropriate, and just do it, so that the sustainability of Barbados, the growth that we will expect with respect to the build-out of these industries, will be able to help us then, sir, not just be resilient at the household or community level, but I think it feeds naturally into how we will have a much more inclusive recovery, therefore then, sir, helping us to have a much more sustainable macro situation. And so, sir, with those very few words, I'm obliged to you, sorry.
Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and let me express my gratitude to the other speakers who have spoken on this bill. Mr. Speaker, the transformation of a society is a challenging thing. When you are changing, as was shared earlier by the Honourable Member for St. James Central, a society that started out as a slave society, a society that went through colonialism, and has gone through varying forms and trying to transform itself as it seeks to march to a place where you are able to so democratize your economy that whosoever will, big and small, can participate and have the hope within that they can become creators of wealth and that they can leave a legacy for the next generation to be able to build on that wealth and to safeguard the dreams of their families. That is not an easy task. And this government has undertaken wide-ranging initiatives to seek to make the changes at the economic level that will allow for the greater and better participation of the average Barbadian in whatever wealth there is to be experienced in the Barbadian economy. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that I think is a challenge to many governments, it is not just finding the resources to put initiatives in place. It is also about changing the mindset of the people to engage those new changes. Everybody may want a better life, but everybody may not want to do what is necessary or what it takes to be able to participate in that better life. And so bringing your people along with the initiatives and to engage the initiatives which you are putting on the ground is going to be very, very important. Educating them and helping them to understand what needs to be different and why is important. That is why it is so unfortunate that when you are seeking to bring these initiatives, that you have those in the society who try to make hay of those initiatives, who try to sometimes confuse the public about what is being done in their name and for them. But this government has been very deliberate about how it has approached the issue of the democratization of the energy to allow the participation of the average Barbadian in what will be a game changer. For me personally, Mr. Speaker, I am very excited. I could not wait for us to get to this stage. So much so that I've already started sessions with my constituents in relation to understanding how the energy sector can make a difference to them and to their families. But, Mr. Speaker, one of the difficulties we have is helping the average Barbadian to understand that a salary is insufficient to bring you into wealth, that we now have to educate the average Barbadian about the importance of building assets, of investing, of taking a risk, taking calculated risk. And part of the smart energy opportunities requires that our people are able to take a risk. Even if that one small risk is actually purchasing those photovoltaics and putting it on their house. We want them to be able to take a second step to look at investing. Maybe investing in some green bonds, or taking another step, investing in battery storage, or investing in the creation of photovoltaic panels. But it takes time to walk a country to that level. So I just want to share very briefly one of the things that we're doing in the Ministry of Energy and Business to be able to walk with Barbadians on this journey of empowerment, where our intention is to ensure that every person who wants to participate can, that they can go beyond a lotto ticket, Mr. Speaker, as their hope for investment, but to see the opportunities which are around them. As part of our Smart Energy program, one of the things that we are hoping to be able to release in a few weeks would be community programs in which we seek to explain how people can participate in the Smart Energy program. And what we're hoping to offer them is, one, understanding about the technology and how it can be implemented in their homes, provide them with an opportunity to get an assessment, for example, of their current house as to how much it can carry and what it could possibly earn for them. Make available to them as much information as we have on the various financing options that are going to be available to the average Barbadian to be able to do so. To also explain the options in terms of the terms and conditions under which these things will be offered. Because indeed, Mr. Speaker, many of them would be surprised to know that in some cases you don't even have to have a deposit. So powerful is that Smart Energy program in terms of the photovoltaics, Mr. Speaker, that some will not even have to put a deposit in order to be able to get photovoltaics started. So what it does, even those persons who don't have money or have challenges can actually participate in this program. And then, Mr. Speaker, we want to be able then to give them an opportunity to ask all the questions that they want to ask, and to go further to explain the other investment opportunities which they can get involved in, whether it's the battery storage, whether it is investing in a photovoltaic company, whether it's investing with the credit unions or wherever those opportunities are. We believe that these are the first steps and the baby steps that we can take Barbados on in order to build a culture of investment in this country, because that is going to be important. And why is that so? Barbadians have billions of dollars sitting in a bank, savings, doing nothing. Not even doing anything for them, Mr. Speaker, because really they're getting to savings at this point because the interest, the fees, the negotiating fees, the commitment fees, the withdrawal fees, the ATM fees, every time you turn there's a fee, they're actually losing money every month. They're not only paying the bank to keep their money, the bank is making interest on that money and they're not benefiting from it in any possible way. That means that money is not doing them or giving them the benefit which they're really looking for. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, we've had a challenge right through Barbados in relation to being able to get financial institutions to look more favorably on investing with businesses, especially small businesses. The unfortunate thing in Barbados is that you can easily get $4,000 or $5,000 for a living room suite, but to get those same funds to be able to invest in a business is extremely difficult. So the question is, how do we help Barbadians take their existing funds and put it in places, Mr. Speaker, that would allow them to earn? How do you provide opportunities for people to engage in investments that have the possibility of giving them an opportunity to get away from just being a consumer in this country? We have to graduate from being consumers of wealth to being producers of wealth. And that can only happen by the coinciding of two streams that have to occur at the same time. The change in people to want to engage investment, and a proactive government committed to putting in place the opportunities and the initiatives to make sure that there's a more level playing field on which the average Barbadian can see himself being able to earn money and create opportunity for his children, to create a more fair environment for us. And that is what we are here to do through the Smart Energy program, to support the objectives of this legislation to ensure that we democratize energy in this country. And the second thing that we're doing in the ministry is we're working on a community program to bring financial literacy training down to the average Barbadian. One of the things that the pandemic did, it not only exposed, as was said earlier, the divide in terms of technology, it also exposed the fact that there's a certain level of dysfunction within our families that makes it difficult for them to work together. So even to take advantage of the Smart Energy program, you need people to be working together with a common goal, a common vision. And this is where we believe financial literacy training will assist our people to understand that wealth is a team sport. Wealth is not an individual sport. Getting out of poverty is a team sport. Can't get out of poverty by yourself. And if we're going to break the back of the poverty that holds our people, we are going to have to put on the ground at the same time to support the Smart Energy program, the financial literacy training that our people need, that they can change their behaviors, how they deal with their money, but more importantly, how they work together as a family to be able to build wealth. Because no race has ever become wealthy by people operating on their own. It is because the people have been able to operate as families and then move from families into cooperatives. And that's another element of what the Ministry of Energy and Business will be offering, showing people how to work in cooperatives to help us to move forward. And the Smart Energy program will benefit from that cooperative movement. So, Mr. Speaker, I won't detain the House any longer. I really just wanted to alert the House and to alert the public through you, sir, that this government is holistic in its approach. We are deeply committed to the well-being and welfare of every Barbadian. And we are committed to breaking the back of poverty from our communities. We are determined to ensure that every Barbadian, no matter his color, his status, his educational level, who his parents were, where he lives, how many CXCs he obtained, that regardless of who you are in this country, there is a place and an opportunity for you to earn, to build wealth, and to be able to pass to the next generation a better quality of life than we had during our time. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for those few words, and I trust that Barbadians will work with us, collaborate with us, because, again, this is not something that 30 people in a parliament can do. It requires the entire society to understand the program and plan and walk hand in hand with the government to make it a living reality, get us over this chasm, and get us on the road to prosperity. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. James Central.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to begin my short wrap-up by expressing my indebtedness to the honourable members who would have participated in this debate, sir, not the least of which would have been, obviously, the Prime Minister, who elaborated on the significance of this renewable energy effort to the wider economy, and of course, its significance for financial independence at the individual level. A speech which dovetails quite nicely with that just given by the honourable member for St. James South, who has expatiated upon the ministry's efforts, both at financial literacy and reaching into the wider community so that people can understand. In fact, we have already begun this journey at Queen's College a couple weekends ago, allowing people to participate in complete presentation and understanding of what all that is involved in getting renewable energy into your home, onto your roof, transforming the roof from just being a covering for the house to being a revenue-earning object. Mr. Speaker, I am equally indebted to the presentations from the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central and the Member for Christchurch East Central, who, sir, would have spoken at length about the importance of removing the uncertainty that existed under the previous, under the legislation as it previously stood, and allowing us, sir, to use this amendment to accelerate the delivery of renewables across this community. In effect, Mr. Speaker, sir, the lie has been put, unimpeachably so. The lie has been exposed. The scandal that was falsely put abroad has been scotched, and the country now sees, sir, that all that this government tried to do was to bring transparency to a process and to facilitate a process that could not properly be facilitated under the legislation as drafted and presented to the country by the Democratic Labour Party. Mr. Speaker, sir, it remains only to observe that he who leads that party now has brought upon himself the dubious distinction of being the boy who cried wolf. And that, sir, is something that could have been avoided if only a level of maturity had been brought to bear to this process. I close, sir, by saying to them all that if there is an element of doubt, there really is, for me as minister, I say this sincerely, no desire whatsoever to entangle this sector in political imbroglio. No desire, sir, for us to get into the back and forth of the politics. We are building out a sector for Barbados, a new sector pregnant with opportunity and potential. I want to benefit from the widest possible input and to build the widest possible consensus on the way forward. This is not about the government or for the government, though it is led obviously by the government. It is for the wider community of people, and that includes those people who do not support the government as well. I am a phone call away, and I am willing, able, and ready to work with any people who want to contribute in a serious way to the development of this sector. And Mr. Speaker, sir, with those few words, I beg to move that this be read a second time.
Question that the aforementioned bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that Your Honour do not leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it.
This House is now in committee.
Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
I second that, sir.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Other honourable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
Beg to second that.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
Beg to second that.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you now report to His Honor the Speaker the passage of one bill in committee.
Beg to second that.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
I beg to, that, Mr. Chairman, I beg to no, sorry. No, he reports.
Yeah, but you have to beg that he leave the chair and report to the speaker.
Passage of one bill. I did it already. Yeah, I did it.
Before you vote.
The chairman of committee is reporting the passage of one bill in committee. All members in GM Central.
The Attorney General is being overly helpful, sir. I beg to move, sir, that this bill be now read a third time.
Beg to second that.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the, craving your indulgence, sir. I want to get the exact title. The Electric Light and Power Amendment Act. Amendment Bill. Electric Light and Power Amendment Act 2013.
Beg to second.
20 what? 2022? Yeah,
2022.
2022, sir. It had 2013.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honourable Member St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, with that, we've come to the end of government business for today. I beg, therefore, to move the adjournment of Parliament until Tuesday 9th of August at 10 a.m. Tuesday, 9th August at 10 a.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 9th day of August at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 9th day of August at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.